Hello. It's good to greet you again in our semi-weekly uh, time to get together. There's so much that God is doing with and through our unit and our church. And it's good for us to get these stories and tell them and celebrate them. In the Bible, it says that Jesus took a child and placed that child in the midst of them. And then he said that if you want to be a part of God's reign, God's family, that you've got to be like that child. So I saw a few places recently where God took a child. God took a child, and our government placed those children in a place called Artesia. It is a detention facility for the wave of moms and their kids coming from Central America and also more and more from Mexico. 400 of these children were placed in the middle of the desert in a place with not one sign of grace or beauty. And we had the opportunity to go there and be there and embrace these children. Some of the mothers seem almost to be children too. And hear their stories. One particularly haunts me, a young mom from Honduras who was with her child, had to leave another child back in Honduras, had to flee for her life basically, and had been there 4 months. 4 months with her child, both of them just depressed. Her daughter was maybe 7 or 8. Story after story, and yet they come with their faith as well as their children, and we're happy to have us pray with them. And but our church is there, and so God took a child. Let's go to Detroit. Driving through Detroit to get to the downtown Renaissance, of course, you see what has happened to that city over many years. And our young people will go to Detroit and find out why and how things work in our country, or don't work. But God took a bunch of children, a little older now, youth and young adults, to a summit for youth and young adults. It was an incredible event. And in both of these, I want you to notice how God is renewing relationships, how God is resetting how we are with each other, how every time these relationships get reset, it's a sign of God's continued grace in the world. So yes, there's Artesia, and there is what happens when kids and their moms cross two borders, many times running for their lives. But then there was our president sharing last night a way in an imperfect world to help several million of God's children to come out of the shadows, to join us as they work, have the right to work, pay taxes, be neighbors. They are already neighbors, but in a little bit more of a dignified way. God took a child. And I just loved how at the border our church is there. Bishop Jim Gonia and Rocky Mountain Synod went with us to Artesia. Pastor Rosemary Sanchez Guzman and her wonderful congregation in El Paso and other congregations in El Paso and Carlsbad. The youth border ministries, volunteers down there. Lawyers, pro bono lawyers who spend a week at a time in the desert helping these children to get some justice. Mike Stady in disaster response. Our church and all of its, and Global Mission, because these folks are from Central America and Mexico, and our compassion doesn't stop at the border. So again, one of these wonderful ways that God took a child, and to take that child, God has a church. And in Detroit, to see all these wonderful ministries come together as young people were really had an opportunity to start asking, what form will my following Jesus take as I live out my life? What is a well-lived life? How do I want to show up? And to have folks from our disaster response, Rosella and Paul Amlin and their networks, all these networks that we're privileged to work with coming together, the youth gathering doing some of their preparation at the same time, the local synod, Tia Upchurch Freelove, our communicator and grassroots organizer from our advocacy footprint, all of these folks coming together to be with the children and to help them see what their life might be like. So in CSM, we're talking about building healthy community, but it's not an end in itself. We're strong. Our relationships are always being reset in the tether of the Holy Spirit so that we can be a part of what God's already doing in the world to build healthy communities. And he took a child and placed that child among them and said, if you want to be a part of my family in the world, embrace these children. God bless you all.